Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how I created 22 cards using a whole lot of different specialty papers and one specific die from Waffle Flower. This is the Waffle Flower Outline Circle die. If you have something similar to this that takes up kind of most of the front of a card and cuts out circles, hearts, stars, whatever you happen to have in your stash, you will be able to follow along and create something similar. I really wanted to try out a couple of things here. One is I had this beautiful gloss cardstock in the pastel color that I got as a freebie from scrapbook.com. If you ever order from them, make sure that you go to the coupons tab because you can add free things to your order, somewhere between 1 and 5 things every time. And they often do have discount codes as well. So make sure you're checking those out when you are placing any orders. So I have this beautiful glossy cardstock and it's very, very pretty, and it just, honestly, it feels like one of those types of cardstock or papers that you think, I don't want to waste this, I want to use it for the perfect project. So if you tend to hoard things, I'm going to say that today's card design is a really good way of using up special items but stretching them across multiple cards. I went through and used not only the glossy paper, but some of the scraps you can see here of, some shimmer paper, some shimmer cardstock. They're all different sizes, so you can use scraps for this as well. I had some flocked paper that I have in yellow and orange, and I ran through and just cut out a whole bunch of bits and pieces that I can use for when I color coordinate some different designs later in the video. Now here I'm showing you how I created my sentiments today. So I've got some of these little leftover bits and pieces where this looks like it's gold shimmer cardstock, where I cut some circles. And I'm going to use that as a little bit of a template on this little scrap of cardstock here so that I can put in some basic white circles and stamp a sentiment right in the middle. Because I knew I was going to have some glossy, bright coloured backgrounds and outlines as part of some of my paper piecing activity today, I used a lot of white. So I did lots of colours, but I also did almost the same amount of white because I knew I wanted to have that as the gorgeous outline border. But then also where I used coloured card, I also used some white circles in different places too. It'll all make sense in a little bit. So for the moment though, it just is a very simple process here to use that outline as a guide. And I've just run through and just stamped a small little sentiment here. And I did some hello, some happy birthday, a few different sentiments so that I could mix and match them on the cards. And it just gave me a little bit of variety so I didn't create all of the cards the same. And then I can donate them to different charities or I can use them for my stash for family and friends. You can see with these ones here, this is a slightly bigger circle. So I did the largest circle and then the next size down for the sentiments, just because this card design and the die itself does create some quite small circles that aren't really suitable to put text or words on. So I stuck to the ones that were a little bit bigger and created a whole series of those. Now I didn't know how many, I just ran through and created some, put them on the tray in the mix, and then from there started creating. One of the key things that I needed for my next step was some double-sided adhesive. Now for this you can use these big giant rolls which will cover the back of a card panel, or you can use double-sided tape and you can just layer it next to each other so that you've got some pretty good coverage. You probably don't need to have a complete cover like I have here, but because I do have that bigger roll, it just made it nice and quick to kind of go through this process. You can see here I am putting in one of the white inlay pieces. As I progressed and did multiples of these, I found it was actually easier to put this layer in with the backing panel first and then attach the double-sided tape off the back of it. That just meant I didn't have to fiddle with some of these little pieces here that really I needed to line up because the backing sticker is very, 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 very sticky. It holds the paper super well. With the white, it was a little harder than with the really stiff coloured cardstock that you can see here. So either way will work, but I do recommend popping these in beforehand and then putting the tape on the back. It just makes it a lot easier. Once you have all of these panels ready to go, you get to what I call kind of the most fun part, which is deciding your colour combinations. I did try not to overthink it too much. So I started here with, these are the pastel circles from that particular paper pad from scrapbook.com. And I just made sure that I used each of the different colors, and I knew that I had more colors than, sort of more circles than colors. So I tried to make sure that I used each color, and then where I had a duplicate, they were not next to each other, just so that the colors were a little bit more spread out. And as you can see on the craft cardstock with the white outline, I think even just the most basic layout of this ended up absolutely amazing. And it's such a great card in person. Like, you can see the interest, you can tell that it was handmade, but it didn't take a lot of time. So there was a lot of fiddling around with cutting out all of the dies. You can see I've kind of got them in a tub, so they're all mixed in together. But in general, this is a very, very quick process. And I feel like maybe because they all come together in the end quite quickly, it's quite satisfying. With this one, the bright orange there is flocked paper. So if you don't know what that means, it's like fairy. So when you run your fingers over it, it kind of feels almost like fabric. Not even fabric, like microfiber. I don't even know, but it's got a really gorgeous sort of fairy felt texture. And so I took the opportunity to mix that with a couple of the different oranges in the pastel set. Now I'm working through and saying, okay, well, I've got some blues. What am I going to do with these bright, shiny shimmer cardstock blues? And I've matched these up with some orange and blue from this little set here. So you can see that even though I've used lots of different colors when I've done the die cutting, I'm not trying to introduce everything at once. Like, this is not a free-for-all. I'm not just grabbing bits and pieces and hoping for the best. I'm actually looking at what I have and saying, okay, what will match the navy blue? And I'm creating some cards. All right, what's now going to match with this? It's kind of a dark chocolate outline. Okay, let me see if I can use a few more of the blues maybe, and then I think after this I then move on to doing some of the purple and some of the gold and some of the green. Because I had so much footage, I did trim this down to show just a few of the different colors and the different designs. And I will say, after I finished this video, I then went on to use up all of the leftover supplies and create maybe another 50 or 60 cards really quite quickly. So based on the fact that I made about 70 cards, I think you'll say this was successful and I really enjoyed the process. Originally, I was going to try and use this die and create maybe 4 or 5 different looks, but because I had a lot of fun with the pattern piecing, like piecing it into like a 1-layer flat card, I had so much footage that I just kept it nice and simple. If you would like to see me using this die set to create a bunch of different looks, then maybe put a comment below and let me know if you've got any specific ideas. I'm thinking that I could use the outlined for some of the mixed media cards, and I could probably introduce some pattern papers and a few other things that could be a little bit more, a little bit different, I guess. Now, with this one here, I thought, let me try some stamping. So I've stamped onto a piece of cardstock so I know where these border dies are going to line up, or border stamps, sorry. And now I'm putting the circles in the middle. That way I know I'm going to get a full set of dots onto the die cut, or a full set of stripes or dashes. And I find that really, really helpful because it's super quick. And in fact, I don't think that's dots, I think that's stars. So I'm putting stars in a brown ink onto those, and then I've got some small ones and some larger ones, and so I've gone through and I think I did some navy and I did some brown. So I just tried out a couple of different colors to see how I could use some of the white circles that were in the middle of those other outlines. So here I'm using a colored outline and then a lighter color insert to give a little bit of a different look. And you'll see when I have these 3 all being completed at once, it's super fast just to grab the little circles and slot them into the gap. It's like doing a jigsaw puzzle kind of. And the birthday, here we go. This is where I put in the sentiments. Now for these 3, I did make these all the same. And this was, as I said, super, super quick. It's just drop them straight in. When you're putting them into the little gaps, you'll see that I tend to have the circle on an angle. And what I'm doing is I'm putting it in on an angle so it's hitting the edge of the circle outline, and then I'm dropping it in onto the tape. If you try and line it up from the top and drop it down and you're off center, it will really stick tightly to the tape, and then you'll have a tough time trying to pull it off and then recenter it. So just that natural technique is to try and line it up a little bit with the edge and then drop it in. Don't drop it in too quickly because this tape, the double-sided tape, is extremely strong. And I did have that problem a couple of times where I was moving too quickly, and then I had to kind of do a bit of card surgery to pull them out and then re-stick them back in. The other thing I'll say as well is I did learn along the way that the little bits that are in the middle of the circle outline, there's actually 3 of them. There's a little triangle up the top near kind of the Mickey Mouse ears part. And then there's a little double-ended triangle strip a little bit in the middle. And then there's another triangle at the bottom. When I did all of my die cutting, I kind of threw those away and I didn't really think about them. But if you're looking at this card here, it would be really great if I had had the glossy orange to be able to drop into those spots so that the card looked a little bit more complete. Now, I managed to track down some of them to put into some of the cards, and in some instances where it was a white outline, I put white into that gap. And when I got really stuck, I then just used some glitter. So I just dropped it into that spot because remember behind there, it's really sticky. So it meant I could put something in to make sure that there wasn't a gap, but it also meant that I didn't have to leave it open and sticky because then it would just get quite dirty and look quite messy for the recipient. So the other thing I think you could do is if you just put all circles into these and you didn't include a sentiment like I have here into the circle, you could put a sentiment straight over that little strip there and you wouldn't need to worry about filling it in. But I encourage you to keep all the pieces up front and then you can make a decision later about what makes the most sense. As I mentioned, I had a whole lot of supplies left after I sat down and did this first session making these circle cards. Lots of outlines in craft, lots of outlines in different colours including white, even some in the specialty papers. Lots of the stamped ones left, but really more of the plain solid cardstock. And a lot of those in there are the fancy flocked ones or the shimmer cardstock. I also have quite a few of these outlines here where I actually cut a rectangle that are the perfect size for the front of a card base. And so here I'm sorting through and I'm working out how many of these have a sentiment in them and how many do I need to finish. Most of them had a sentiment in one of the circles, but you can see here the color combinations were quite varied. I think I like the ones with the colored cardstock more than I like the ones with that stamping on the white. So maybe I should explore doing a bit more stamping of different styles so that I can expand my repertoire a little bit. Here I have one of my little trays that I have a mix of sentiments on. And once I use up quite a few and I have others in my stash, I'll then drop them into this little thing so that whenever I'm creating bulk cards, I have options. So I'm moving around like happy birthday, hello, I think there's a thank you, just trying to decide how do I make each of these 4 cards look a little bit different and just practicing putting a sentiment on top rather than in a circle. I think these ones actually turned out really nicely. I highly encourage you to shop your stash and see what you have available. I feel like anyone who has been die cutting or card making for a while will have something that could be used for this. You could even use just standard circle dies if you have some of those in your stash also to create something similar. If you are looking for a way to create lots of bulk cards and you're looking for a different idea, then I have put another video here that I think you might enjoy. Have a great day.